Animaniacs, issue 51. It turns out Acme's got satellites too. An astronaut says to ditch this junk and the spaceship goes away. And Pinky tells Brain the astronauts have left. So Brain thinks Earth's largest satellite is his and plans on taking over the international broadcasting system because he thinks he could do whatever he wants that way, even though it just caused people to be sent up to him to stop him. If he doesn't have a plan for that, he's doomed. Pinky's relatable because he'd rather take a nap, and he's sitting in something warning about toxins. But surprisingly, that doesn't get noticed and become a plot point. Pinky yawns, uninterested in his plan, which makes sense because he's acknowledged that most of them fail. It's nice of Brain to tell him he's allowed to nap and miss his big moment. Pinky at least justifies that he'll catch it in reruns, and Brain reveals that he thinks without television, civilization would be flushed down the toilet, even though it really predates television. He must think causing a panic over that would help him get in power, when clearly it'd only get him in trouble. He gives people a message saying what you'd expect, and they see him on various TV screens outside, reminding me of when Eggman did this. Brain fortunately explains away why people couldn't just adjust their set, and says he controls all of the broadcast frequencies in telecommunications, so if he doesn't get what he wants, he'll destroy all forms of communication. Again, he doesn't realize that even if he was given what he wanted, it'd just be to humor him for a bit until people could safely arrest him. Also, he's not considering that only people who speak English would understand his message, but people would translate it. Pinky says this is boring, not napping after all, and justifies it better by saying that something like this happened on Batman Beyond. He uses a remote control to see what else is on, and changes the channel and shows people a nature show. And everyone watching is smiling, immediately relieved, which makes sense because this proves that someone's able to stop Brain from succeeding right now. Brain made it clear that he's dead set on becoming the world's leader, so it should be obvious to people that doing what the gorillas did wouldn't change his mind. But it's the only idea they've been given. Predictably, Brain doesn't get a message from Earth after 24 hours. Pinky says he'll take a bath in a tube, and Brain says that's the decompression chamber. Eventually, Brain decides to look at what the people of Earth are doing and sees people from various different countries holding hands, and shaking hands. And somehow he shudders, even though he thinks taking over the world would cause world peace, and he wants to make the world a better place. Brain wonders how, and finds out that they're being shown the Nature Channel all the time. This would only cause world peace if people were intentionally trying to make Brain think this happened to trick him. I thought we'd see people taking insects out of logs because that's what the narrator seemed to be telling people to do right after Brain said, unless. Brain gets mad, but fortunately for Pinky, he turns around and acts delighted because it's caused the nations of the world to lay down their arms for him. Pinky says Brain's overlooked something, and warns him that they don't know how to get back to Earth. Brain says back to where, for no reason. He makes Pinky pedal to power a spinning propeller in space with a balloon attached to it as they're in a can. There's no reason the propeller would send them forwards with no air to push back, obviously, so I don't know how they're moving. Animaniacs, issue 52. It starts out with Brain looking darker than normal for no apparent reason. And it might be a different universe because he says the most stereotypical witch's chant while stirring something called a potion. He plans on putting age reversal potion in the world's drinking water, and thinks that everyone will regress to childhood, leaving him to rule. It'd also be lethal for everyone who's already a kid. This wouldn't be the first time he didn't fully think things through, so maybe he doesn't know that. But if he does, it's out of character for him because it's not like him to try to get anybody killed. And even if the potion put people's memories back to when they were kids too, this plan wouldn't work anyways because the leaders of the world would instantly rediscover from reading that they're known for being in charge and send people to get back at Brain. I guess Brain's hoping that people would give him what he wants out of the fear that he'd do something that's world-altering again otherwise. And he's not the only person who's assumed that he could scare people and get what he wants from authority. But the way this tends to work in reality is that the leaders don't give in regardless. I assume the potion only keeps working in the water for a little bit, like a day, until it'd get dissolved away. Because if it stayed in the world's drinking water for too long, people would be forced to drink it again and get made to get younger, and everyone would die. Also, is he forgetting that not all of the world's drinking water comes from the same place? It'd take forever for him to spike every single place. He couldn't have this happen all at once because he's not known for relying on tons of robots. And drinking water gets produced from fog in the air too. Not everyone could get affected by his potion. He'd need big drilling machines to put it in underground reservoirs. Does he have enough resources to make enough of this potion? It'd take forever to make enough to make everyone on Earth younger. But he could use science to become immortal and program a robot to automatically have more potion get made and tell him if he's running out of room to store it, so he could do this eventually. He says his potion is ready, but he's only got a tiny mouse-sized container in front of him. He also wants to use the potion to finally do something about his wrinkles, and reveals that he's actually insecure about them as a result, when I thought he was vain. Somehow, Brain's certain about which sport is America's favorite when he wouldn't care about sports. Pinky's back from playing badminton with stuff that's small enough for him to use, so Brain must have made it for him. He tries to jump at and bat away a badminton ball for fun, and he ends up splashing them with a potion, getting them to look younger. Somehow this makes Brain talk more informally for no reason. Pinky acts a bit more sensitive and cries, and somehow they're both wearing little kid-style clothes. Because magic potion. And Brain can still remember what he was like before this, rather than their memories being reversed. Because magic. So it's a good thing Brain was portrayed like he was mixing a magic potion, because only magic would have this exact result. So he literally got the potion ingredients from a witch. Brain assumes there's no antidote for the formula, but why? There wasn't a Little Sabrina story. Brain conveniently sees a piece of paper with a message saying to call a number if you want your kids to end up being leaders, and it advises people to send them to a high-bar kindergarten school. Brain's desperate enough to delude himself that he could subjugate kindergartners just because he's smarter than them and grow up to rule the world. You'd think Pinky would have warned him that the kids would just do nothing but bully him for being different, because he watches TV a lot, and he always points out the flaws in his plans. The kindergarten teacher is passive-aggressive, insulting Brain and Pinky's looks. How are they being allowed to enroll in the school with no legal guardian for the principal to talk to while clearly looking like they're not humans? You'd think that when Brain said he's imagining her boiling in oil, there'd be consequences. Brain reluctantly agrees to play with blocks. Somehow Pinky gets told he did very good, even though she thinks he was trying to spell point and failed. And she asks Brain if spelling words is too advanced for him because he hasn't done it at all. Brain would have done that. And Pinky wasn't even trying, because of course he was trying to spell point, not an actual word. But I can't blame him for not caring enough to try, because it doesn't really matter. Somehow there were blocks with math on them. It's obvious that the artist doesn't care about this making sense, but making that too obvious without being entertaining just gets the audience insulted. Brain does spell out a word, and somehow gets no consequences for it. Pinky somehow gets complimented by the teacher for eating the paste. Then she freaks out and calls Brain's paste sculpture of Venus de Milo a naughty sculpture. She must be acting like this just to spite Brain. And to be fair, she has every reason to. I don't like that sculpture either. She says she can tell that Pinky's the future world's leader because his eating paste made the rest of the class do it. Then when recess starts, an uncreative bully character tells Brain to stay off his turf, and then offers Pinky some hidden paste to humor him. As Pinky enjoys playing jump rope, the kids sing and make fun of Brain, who gets bullied after making a Sphinx sand sculpture. Nothing interesting happens after that until recess ends. Finally, we're shown the consequences for eating paste because Pinky says his stomach hurts. Although since none of the other kids complain about that, I guess it's actually about the potion wearing off. Pinky feels his body growing and returns to normal. After Brain tells the teacher he was being bullied, the teacher doesn't care about him and shows no signs of planning to punish the bully for it, and just complains that Brain missed the Ritalin train because he's showing emotion. But this at least makes sense because Brain's giving everyone no reason to like him, so she would be biased against him. Without that excuse, it'd be completely ridiculous that she'd say this. Brain tells her off that it's disgraceful that school today is more about encouraging mediocrity and conformity than teaching the individual to grow. Today? He'd know it's always been like that. It must have been. He lampshades that she's unable to recognize his genius. Realistically, she would have recognized it, and she's just ignoring it out of spite. She says he should be put in a special class for the non-medicated. And even though Pinky says he's all grown up again, somehow the teacher calls him Brain's father, as if she didn't hear him say that. It's nice of him to reassure him that he recognizes him. He's told to take Brain home and teach him to eat paste like a normal medicated kid, because she doesn't like him. Pinky says Brain flunked kindergarten and doesn't get corrected, even though being told to take him home doesn't necessarily mean that. And he didn't do anything expulsion-worthy in this scene. It was nice of him to tell him not to cry at least. This was by Frank Strom. That name's familiar. So I'm pretty sure he wrote the Monkey Khan stories in Archie Sonic too. And that Dan Slott from Pinky and the Brain 3 wrote a story with Sonic in it. Brain tells the world he's gonna end all telecommunications and broadcasting unless he gets made the world's ruler. But Pinky changes the channel to Nature Show to boredom, not realizing that everyone else would see it too after Brain said unless. Somehow, this causes people of various countries to be nice to each other and hold hands, like they'd only do if they were trying to make people think there's world peace. I thought it'd cause people to imitate the animals on the Nature Show in the desperate hope that it'd actually convince Brain not to follow through on his threat. And there's no indication he even did that at the end. Why wouldn't he follow through on his threat? It'd make more sense if people were sent to the satellite to stop Brain. Brain didn't use an Eclipse cannon to damage the moon. But he still made a threat that would get people to take him seriously. So the only reason they wouldn't is that they were shown it could be foiled so easily, or at least humiliated. It was good that Brain saw the positives of the great thing Pinky did. But you'd think a genius like Brain would have come here with a plan on how to get back to Earth quickly. Their only hope is if someone rescues them before they dehydrate. This annoying story by Jesse McCann is about Pinky's attempt to bat away a badminton ball, knocking over a potion that makes him and Brain younger from mere contact. And somehow Brain deludes himself into thinking that he could subjugate kids to his will by joining kindergarten and proving how smart he is, when it's obvious to anyone that he'd just be bullied. What makes the story annoying is that the teacher is portrayed as a stupid bitch to him too. Though at least makes perfect sense because she thinks he looks freakishly different and Brain was being unlikable from the start, telling her that he's on a mission to take over the world. That biased her against him already, and then he said he wanted her to boil in oil. You'd think he'd be taken to the principal and kicked out of the building after this. No teacher would have the patience to keep him there and just punish him by ignoring all of his signs of being a genius. But those signs were the thing keeping the story interesting. It's just too bad there was annoying padding in between them. She is right that he didn't spell anything when she told him to, so he made a dumb mistake when he should have known better. All she seems to care about is whether someone would follow her every instruction, not whether he can prove he's a genius without doing that. And that's in character for every teacher. But then she reveals herself to be completely crazy because she's happy about the fact that the rest of her class started eating paste. Everything else negative was rooted in reality, but this isn't. It just makes the story too mean-spirited. She'd only be portrayed like that because the writer hates her, and seems to hate all kindergarten teachers since we don't see any positive examples. And she talks as if most kids are on Ritalin. So this story's dripping with satire, tearing apart how school is. And you can tell from Brain's rant that he's a mouthpiece for it. But she was given every reason to be biased against Brain. We don't get to see if she would have acknowledged his genius if he was nice and cheerful. So it's not proven that Brain's correct about his rant. Especially since no teacher would encourage paste eating until she isn't a genuine representative of teachers. So this only says that only a rare or terrible teacher would refuse to acknowledge genius, when it seems like his rant was written with the writer thinking that's normal. We don't know if she would have been fine with his Venus de Milo if he was nice all along. How does he expect her to make him grow if he's been showing that he's at his peak? The story was annoying because Brain was treated like dirt the whole time. And just because he said stuff and had an evil plan making him deserve it, doesn't mean I'm guaranteed to enjoy him being treated unfairly. It'd be better if she said at the start that she's gonna be hard on him to punish him for his evil potion or for abusing Pinky. If you want to make a story about Brain being miserable, the story's better off entirely focusing on slapstick, not dialogue. Even then, his slapstick was annoying because it was done for the wrong reason, and most of it wasn't creative enough to be interesting.